Hey guys, welcome back again to Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy, where the proof is in the singing. I wanted to go ahead and do a vocal coach reacts to Michael Bolton, and his actual real name is Michael Bulletin. I think he was of Russian Jewish descent, if I'm not mistaken, and actually was a metal singer back in the 70s, late 70s, and then kind of switched over to become more of the ballad guy in the early 80s. And it's kind of funny, I think he had a band called Blackjack, look me up on this, that he actually, I think, warmed up for Ozzy Osbourne and even tried out for Black Sabbath at one point as a lead vocalist. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started, but just a phenomenal talent. And before I forget, we actually did a cover of this song, When a Man Loves a Woman, that I did with my student Adam Spizzo, and I'll put that in the description so you can check out and see how we did working up that song. But without much further ado, let's go ahead and rock. I have not seen this, so I just want to go ahead and fire it up. Here we go. It sounds like a lower key. Let me think. Yeah, he's doing it like in the key of A, and I think the original version is in the key of C sharp, so he's already doing it a lot lower. So I know this is later in his life, so maybe that's the reason for that. This is at the Albert Hall. So look at the original version of Michael Bolton too, because there's a lot of tension in the voice when you sing higher, and it's obviously a lot harder to sing. But so anyway, we're in the key of A, if I'm not mistaken, and let's continue.
Can't keep his mind on nothing else. He traded the world for the good things.
Wow, surprisingly young crowd for him there. That's cool.
If she's bad, he can't see it.
Spot on pitch and tone. Sounds good.
She can do no wrong.
Nice high notes. Those are different than the original.
Turn his back on his best friend. He puts her down.
Big audience. Okay, few things right up front. His tone is killer as always. His pitch is spot on. His soul is great. I could see why Oprah Winfrey is, I guess this is one of his favorite, or maybe not even her most favorite vocalist. She's had him on her show quite a few times. And I actually got to work with his engineer indirectly, or directly, but and got to meet him indirectly through some other things. But I'll explain that in a second. I'll share that story. You'll like it. It's pretty funny. But let's continue. Nice.
Just trying to hold on to what he needs. He give up on all his comforts.
Tasty.
And sleep out in the rain. If she said that's the way, baby, that's the way it ought to be. Oh, yeah. When this man really loves a woman.
That's really nice, man. He's doing a fantastic job.
I give you everything. I mean everything.
It's nice.
Just trying to hold on.
Okay, so I take back what I said about him being older, and what it sounds like he did is he put it in the key of A so that he could sing higher notes and play with the melody a lot more, because he doesn't do that when he does it in C sharp. So he's got a lot more note choices, and he's using them, and he's definitely singing up into the C sharp register of the original version, but he's just being a little more flavorful and tasty with it, and a little more gentle, which is cool. So one of the stories I was going to tell about, anyway, the guy that was doing a lot of his mixing at the time was a guy named Mick Guzowski, and you could probably look him up because he worked with Daft Punk. In fact, he got a Grammy for that, Get Lucky, and all that stuff. Anyway, I got to work with Mick on one of my records for like a year, and he's one of the best mix engineers in the world. I kid you not. In fact, two funny stories. The first one is, I was recording this album called Magdalene, and we were out at a studio in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. It was called Ocean Way, and it was owned by a guy named Alan Sides. And so Alan knew that Mick was coming in, and Mick was like revered all over the place, right? And so what he did was he called another guy named Vincent Van Hoff, who was a really famous room designer and room tuning guy and worked with a lot of high-end gear, and had him come in and tune the room so that when Mick came, everything would be perfect, right? Well, so Mick phones in his order as we're working on the drums. He phones in his order in advance, and the drummer at the time is a guy named Ken Mary, M-A-R-Y. You can look him up. He played with Alice Cooper and a bunch of other people. Anyway, he's the drummer on the record. And so the second engineer, they're cracking on the snare. Now, for those engineer guys out there, you'll really appreciate this. The center information is like kick drum, snare drum, bass guitar, right? So anything that's center information is not panned left or right. So in this case, it was the snare. So we're cracking on the snare, and Mick calls in his order, and he has special microphones and wants them placed in certain ways. And of course, he comes in and tweaks it when he gets there. He walks into the control room as we're cracking on the snare to make sure the preamps he ordered were all right. And he goes, "This is unacceptable." And he starts panicking, This is totally unacceptable. And so Alan says, "Whoa, Mick, hold on. What do you mean it's unacceptable?" He goes, "On that side of the PA, or the speakers," he goes, "it's off by about a half dB at 4,000 cycles. I can't work under these conditions." And Alan reassured Mick. He said, "No, Mick, Vincent was here this morning. We tuned the room. We made sure everything was right before you got here." He says, "I don't care what you did. It's off by about a half dB on that side at 4,000 cycles, and I'm gonna go get some sushi. You call me when it's ready." I'm like, "What the heck? You gotta be kidding me." And of course, the clock's running down, and we're paying for this really expensive room, and Mick's time, and all the engineers' time, other second engineer, and so forth. So anyway, so Alan comes back and he starts looking, and now if I'm not mistaken, it was like a three-way system. So you have a power amp for the bass speakers, you have a power amp for the mid-range speakers, then you have a power amp for the tweeters up top. And so we go back into the room. It's a separate room where the amps are, the power amps are, and we're looking with a flashlight, and everything looks fine. Everything looks fine. Now, when you go to tune a room, you have to power down the power amplifiers, and then there's a little dial, and you power them back up. Old school stuff, right? So anyway, sure enough, on the left side in the upper tweeter at about 4,000 cycles, those were went from 4 to 20 or whatever, about 4,000 cycles, the power amp did not get turned all the way back on by about a half a dB. I kid you not, straight up. So anyway, so Alan calls Mick back and he goes, "Hey, I think we got it, going on, blah, blah, blah." Doesn't even explain to him what happened. Mick comes back in the room, cracking on the snare, and he goes, "Oh, that's so much better. Let's get to work." I'm like, what the heck did I just witness? Well, that's the engineer for this guy here, Michael Bolton, and a bunch of others. One other quick story. I got to tell you this one. So when Mick was working on our record, and our well-meaning manager at the time, who also was a manager for Four Seasons Leasing. He owned the largest tour busing company, rock tour busing company in the world, Four Seasons Leasing, named Michael Slar. Anyway, he had... meaning well, we wanted to get Foreigner's "I Want to Know What Love Is" choir to sing on the background of one of our songs, and they were very expensive. So he was at the post office one day, and he heard these chicks in the back singing away, and so he thought they could foot the bill. So he brought them into the studio while Mick was recording, and they were so awful. Mick actually had just finished, I think it was Cher's "When You Believe" or something, but it was a really big mix that he did, and he saves all these studio anomalies on what was his Pro Tools unit at the time. It's like Sound Tools actually is what it was, pre-Pro Tools. And so he goes and he put it on, and he's gonna erase the original master that he recorded of Cher's "When You Believe," or "If You Believe," whatever that song's called, because he had nothing else to record it to save the post office girls. I'm like, that is so Mick. If you guys out there know who Mick is. So Mick, I love you. Love your stories. I miss you, dude. Anyway, we're gonna get back to Michael Bolton. Sorry for all the sidetracks, but hey, it's the rock and roll business, right? Here we go.
To your precious love, and baby, please don't treat me bad.
All right, we're going up. Oh, gosh, great camera work, man. Look at those aerial views. Wow. Good band. All right, he's got his bodyguards bringing him back to the front. Got his little gifts along the way, Love the world. I know exactly how it feels. Gosh, guys.
'Cause baby,
Good stuff. Could you imagine being that good? Really think about it. I mean, just being so spot on and so effortless, and you're just walking around, hanging out, singing like, gosh, like nobody's business. Perfect tone, perfect pitch, great soul, and just effortlessly. Isn't that the coolest thing ever? I think we're probably coming into close here. Let's check it out. Okay, I want to point out something for you, some of my singer friends out there. Now, he covers his "When a Man Loves a Woman," and he's really covered in his sound, and it's his style. In fact, it's kind of interesting because it's kind of pre-Eddie Vedder when Eddie sort of, popularized that sound, and then everyone kind of had that marble-mouthy, closed-down sound throughout modern rock, and it was emulated and imitated quite a bit. But he's one of the guys to do it first. Him, Tom Petty did it too. Somebody kicked you around some, right? Where it's a real closed-down sound. But notice when you go, when a man loves a woman, when he goes up top, he has to smile and bring a lot of mask into that sound to be able to get those notes. And guys, it's a pretty dangerous sound from a pitch standpoint, from keeping in good perfect pitch, because when you open up a sound and you make it brighter, there's an apparent flatness, or the sound seems to get more flat as you cover a sound or darken and color that sound. So he's got to negotiate and navigate between covering a sound for the tone that he wants on the bottom. When he goes up top, he has to have a balance of being able to get back to that pitch and then bring that pitch back in perspective and balance in the bottom so he doesn't sound flat when descending a passage. Now we have a saying in bel canto: you never darken or cover, which means to darken, a descending passage, and yet he's doing it all over the place in the name of style. So I think that's actually really cool. Okay. Oh, one more thing too. I'm sorry. He also did a really cool version of "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay" with a couple of guys from Journey, Neil Sean and Jonathan Cain. So if you get a chance to check that out, they worked together because they were San Francisco guys, and they just all get together and they knew each other, and it was pretty cool. So that's another thing. So in the description, I'll put "Sitting on the Dock of the Bay." I'll try to put the original version of him doing "When a Man Loves a Woman" so you can check it out, and then I'll put my version I did with my student Adam Spizzo of this very song, us working out to see how he stood up. And we're never going to be as cool as him. We just gave it our best effort. Okay? All right. Here we go.
When a man really loves a woman,
Great tone, man.
when he loves a woman, needs a woman, really loves a woman. When a man really loves a woman.
So nice.
I am not worthy. I am not worthy.
That was awesome. Cool. And what a great band too, great audience. All right, you guys, if you liked what you heard, please like and subscribe to my channel. I have a singing forums with around 10,000 people in there. We always all are negotiating, talking about this stuff, and I got some great moderators to help you singer guys out there and gals to help you achieve, your singing goals. I have a singing course. It's called How to Sing Better Than Anyone Else, and I walk you through this stuff step by step, how to get to these tones, how to get to this soul. Soul's actually something that you don't learn, it's something that you earn. So we can talk more about that. That's in the course. And anyway, and until next time, guys, I hope that you guys are able to really understand that at this level of that kind of professionalism, he and all of us have to work at being this great. It's not something that's just handed to him, and yes, he was gifted. There's no two ways about that, but he definitely had to work his craft all the way to the end, even to this day, and him just singing in this later years of his life, whatever that's supposed to mean, excuse me, but just still being that awesome. Okay? All right, gang, until next time, peace out. Hey guys, if you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to my channel by clicking on the subscribe button. That will actually take you to another page where you want to click on the bell icon, and it opens up a menu, and the menu has notifications on it where there's a little box you can check where it says send me all notifications for this channel. check the box and then click the save button and you'll get notifications from me every time I have a cool video come out. Okay? Thanks guys. Peace out.